All right, I'm going to talk to you guys really quick about, my name is Megan. I'm going to talk to you guys really quickly about how to encourage mentoring in your children's ministry. So I have 4 points, and we're going to go through them. Now, point number 1 is probably what I feel is one of the most important points, is to be like Christ and meet your kids where they're at. Just as Christ did, we need to meet those that we're mentoring where they're at in their relationship with God, in their relationship with Jesus, wherever that may be. And one of the biggest things I take from scriptures from Luke 24:15. And so it's awesome because we just probably went over this with all of our kids during Easter. But after Christ's death, most of his disciples were, right, they were really confused. They were wandering around. We see that they were just kind of lost. Well, Christ reveals himself, and he goes and he meets 2 of them on the road to Emmaus, right? And he went to them. He went to them. So we need to go to these kids, and we think, okay, well, we're doing that all the time, right? I'm doing this, this, and this. I'm doing A, B, C, and D. But I know for me, on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night or any of the midweek meetings or just anything that we do as volunteers in children's ministry or children's pastors or whatever, we get really, really busy. And we forget to take those tiny little moments that come up when a bunch of kids come up and they give you a hug and they're telling you about something, and it's really easy to get distracted and to be thinking about, I haven't gotten my PowerPoint set up, or I haven't gotten all my supplies for this illustration, or and then all of a sudden you get a cell phone text that 2 of your volunteers are sick, and then you're like scrambling around. But we need to meet them where they're at in that moment. We also need to evaluate where they're at in their relationship with Jesus. So most of my volunteers went to the girls' ministries training, which is great because I get to talk about them now. One of my volunteers, Miss Sharon, you might have met her at one of the table talks. She is incredible, right? She's a former teacher. She's such a blessing to our ministry. She's definitely more of the structured type, which I love because my children's ministry needs structure. So she's like the perfect fit. So we just got her into working with our STARS girls. And she, jumps right in. They're doing their week a few weeks on missionaries. And she comes to me and she's a little bit frazzled, a little bit like, she's like, I'm just sitting there and I'm talking to them about missionaries and they just didn't seem to be getting it. And I was like, okay. And she's like, but then I realized, are they saved? And I'm like, well, did you talk to them about that? And she literally went through every single girl and point blank in front of everybody asked them where they are in their relationship with Christ. And as we know, kids are extremely honest. And they were very honest. Some of them had the right answers, that they're kind of rehearsed into their mind, but some of them didn't really know why they were saying what they were saying. And since that moment, these girls have done a 180, and they have seriously come out and they've memorized their scripture because she's going over it and she's slowing down. And I told her, I was like, you know what, you don't have to rush and get through all of that lesson. If those girls walk away with one thing about Jesus that they didn't know before they walked in your classroom, you're good to go. And that just really spoke volumes to me because she took the time to meet them where they're at. And that kind of brings us to our next point, right? Give realistic goals and expectations. And I think this is something that I know I've struggled with. So often we fear hurting the feelings of others, right? And which is a valid concern in children's ministry. We don't want to hurt children. We don't want to hurt small children's feelings, right? We don't. Most of them are very sensitive. Or even if they don't show that they're sensitive, they are. Similar to what we learned about the little boy Lucas earlier, right? Or somebody came up here, yeah, and he was saying, I'm a bad kid, or that just got to me because it's like we sometimes don't realize what they're hearing. But we need to remember that sometimes mentoring is not always rainbows and fuzzy bunnies and butterflies and lollipops, right? It gets messy. It gets hard. And sometimes, and I was going to buy some plants and start pruning them in front of you, but I didn't. I'm sorry. So just imagine there's a plant here and I'm pruning it. Sometimes we have to prune back. So we have to find the balance of being stern enough to make urge these children to make a difference, to change something about themselves. But at the same time, we need to be sensitive to the fact that they are children. And some of them are facing things that we as adults have never even faced. So where do you find that balance? And of course, we know we want to make sure that we're close to Jesus, that we're right in our own spiritual life, that we're walking where we need to walk, because then that way we hear God clearly enough to know exactly where we need to prune. And not to prune too soon, but also if we prune too late, that's not good either. And it's a huge balance to find. And I'm just telling you what I sought in my heart coming up with this, because I definitely don't have all the answers. So when we're taking these kids out of their comfort zone, we're most likely taking ourselves out of our comfort zone by pushing them. And that's something that I have learned is I tend to be a type of person that doesn't like to ruffle feathers. That's just my kind of default personality. But I realize that I'm going to be absolutely no good if I don't push these kids where they need to be pushed. And as long as I'm walking with God and I'm where I need to be in my relationship with Him, I can trust that I'm hearing Him clearly. So, next thing, right, is, that was point number 3. Do not be afraid to speak up and add guidance when needed, right? We need to make sure that we are pruning for growth. But number 4, I'm not sure if I went in the right order, but mentor with the end game in mind. So we hear this word mentor. And what I was telling my table talks earlier is, what is mentoring? What is it truly? It's something that we have been commanded in the Bible to do. We're discipling. We're making disciples. That is what everything is about, right? We're making disciples for Christ. And that is what mentoring truly, truly is. So what is the end game? The end game is an authentic relationship with Jesus, to have these children have an authentic relationship with Christ. And I also want to add in, for people in here that are the children's pastors or a teacher over a classroom, all of you guys, if you're leading somebody, whether it's a team of volunteers, it's your classroom, that is all discipleship. So I know for me and my volunteers, I take having a healthy relationship with each of my volunteers just as seriously as I take having a good relationship and influence on the children that are in my ministry, because it's all one big ministry, right? It's all one big church, like we were discussing earlier. And I know, and I didn't believe it before I got into children's ministry, so I'm like, oh no, we're going to be part of the church. And there's some Sundays I'm like, I'm just back here. Hi, I don't know what's going on over there in big church, but I'm back here. We are all one. So we want to make sure that we're evaluating our kids, but that we're also making sure that we're being a healthy influence and a great Christ-like example to our volunteers. And so, mentoring, discipleship. Biblically, it's really discipleship. I truly believe that when we look at mentoring, the secular world just said, hey, look at mentoring, discipleship. Oh, we're going to call it this because we're going to separate it from the Bible, because that's truly what it is. If we look at it, right, let's see if I can find the definition here. So definition in Webster is to advise or train. That is what mentoring means. But we know it as discipleship. So sometimes it's easy to get caught up in developing kids. And this was one that really hit home with me. Sometimes we kind of get a little self-helpy, and we're like, okay, we want to teach these kids to be well-behaved and well-mannered, to have fun, and they're reflecting our children's ministry, because how many of you have had a Sunday or a Wednesday or whenever your midweek meetings are, or a special event, where somebody came in back and was, the kids are doing blah, 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 and you're like, I'm sorry. I've had that happen. I don't know how many times. Just the other week, one of our custodial maintenance people came in and he goes, Pastor Megan, I hate marshmallows. And I was like, oh, I wonder if he's talking about the marshmallows that we played with in the gun last week that shoots the marshmallow shooter. Yep, he was definitely talking about that. And I felt like so bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'll make sure the kids aren't as messy. And then I realized, I was like, you know what? They're kids. They're children. Let the children be children, and they're learning about Jesus. We are here to be their influence as pastors, as teachers, as mentors. We want to make sure that we're letting them be kids, and we're not getting so consumed in how they're behaving, but that we're more concerned with making sure that they understand the Word of God and what it really says. So that is probably one of the biggest things, because I'm like I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit of a people pleaser. So I was like, I'm so sorry, and all this stuff, and it's okay. Jeff's cool, so we got back to good with each other. But I will be a little bit more careful with marshmallows, because some of that might have been my fault, right? And so lastly, last point, and this goes into what we were discussing before, we want to make sure that we are not expecting perfection. We want to make sure that we're not expecting perfection, because when we are mentoring, when we are coming alongside this child and we're looking at where they're at in their relationship with Christ, and we're making goals and expectations, because with the goals we want to make sure that we're not expecting perfection. But how many of you guys are to-do list people? Because I'm a big to-do list person. How many of you guys have made a to-do list, and I'm sure you've all heard this before, and you do something extra, so you put it on your to-do list so you could check it off later? I do that because I'm like, oh, look, I did some extra stuff, and that makes the to-do list look like it's more full. I do that all the time. I seriously do that all the time. And it drives my husband absolutely insane that I am such a list person. But it gives you that extra confidence, right? It gives you that extra nudge to get the rest of the list done. If we have these expectations for our kids, especially when it comes to, learning the Bible really quickly and getting the right answers, and we don't give them a realistic expectation, they're going to get discouraged. So we want to make sure that we're putting something in front of them that they can obtain that still stretches them at the same time. And that way it gives them confidence. And that way they can grasp that goal, and then you can move them to the next goal. And I know with me, that's been a huge help in my life with the people that have been influential to me, is that they gave me realistic goals that I can obtain. Because how many of you guys have had somebody put something on you that instantly set you up for failure? I know that I have, and it did not feel good. It was really discouraging. So especially in something that's so important as forming and molding their relationship with Christ, we want to make sure that it's realistic. And that's where you have to be connected with God in your life and make sure that you're strong in there, because so you can hear him. Because when I look at a child, I can't have the same expectation for a third grader as a fifth grader, but at the same time, if this third grader has been going here since kindergarten or nursery, and then I have a brand new fifth grader that's come in, obviously my expectations are going to be different, right? And that's where we have to be careful. We can't expect perfection right off the bat. We also, as we know, we have to be careful with kids and what they're doing, what's going on, what other influences they have, their home life, their school, what's going on. Because they might be completely coming to you, and they might not, you have a kid that's super excited about worship normally, but then something else is going on with them. We have to make sure that we have realistic expectations and that we aren't expecting perfection. Because I know I've had people in my life that have expected perfection out of me, and I'm ultimately going to fail right away. And also they need to feel safe to make mistakes with you. And I think that's one of the biggest things as well, is having you being a safe place where they can come and make mistakes. And I think I'm not sure if it was at district council this last year, but there was some pastors' kids, and they were giving testimony of what God has done in their life. And there was like this expected perfection on them. And it really hit home with me, having two children that I've never really thought were pastors' kids until like literally a month ago. And this is why I was thinking about that. Because my son was running around, and he had grabbed something out of the youth room, and he was running around with streamers, and he was making a hot mess, and somebody came over, and they didn't scold him, but they were like, Elias. And I was like, oh my gosh. And they looked at him like, oh, the children's pastor's child. And I'm like, what? Oh, he is a pastor's. Okay. And I thought to myself, I would never want him to feel like he has to be perfect all the time. And then I thought to myself, I don't want any of the kids in my ministry to feel like they have to be perfect all the time, because I don't want to feel like I have to be perfect all the time. I think with mentoring and being that influence in a child's life, we have to remember that we want to be that safe place where they fall if something goes wrong. And that goes for any ministry, really. But when we're dealing with children, we don't want them to shut down now. That we want them to be open. So that is definitely one of the biggest things for me. I am really hoping that helped some of you guys. Any anyone can be a mentor, and when I first started this working on this session, I thought of talking about formal mentoring and everything, but really we're a mentor at all times because we're discipling at all times. Welcome.